I woke up re-energized on Wednesday morning, and re-energized because of the economic possibilities of our country and knowing that we actually have a path. You may not like the path, and it's okay to disagree with it, but we have a path. I didn't know what the hell the path was with the current administration and the campaign of Harris Walz. I had no idea. And so when we talked about it last time, the anxiety that the general public was having, I think you said it was 72% of voters had anxiety. I think a lot of that was the anxiety as well of like, well, okay, if this side wins, it's not matter who wins. What are they going to do?
Absolutely,
like,
right.
What's their policy?
Yeah,
I can't tell you one thing they were going to do.
They ran a campaign on emotion.
Yes.
Trump ran a campaign on ideas.
Welcome back to the What's More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris, and I'm excited to have my standing co-host, Lenny with me today. It's an exciting day, my friend. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it is great to be here today, right? Because today we are on the second day after the post-election. We know who the new leader of the country is going to be. It's going to be the 47th president, Donald Trump. Pretty excited about this one for many reasons here. And depending on what side of the table you're on, this may or may not be your favorite podcast, but let's be real about it. I think coming out of the election, the American people spoke, and they spoke about two things. I think they spoke about the economy and how they feel. And their checking accounts did not look like they did when Trump was in office. And I think they're worried about the job market. And I think those things, along with, you could argue, I think they were tired of hearing all of the woke media that was going on out there. And I think that's kind of what we saw here is people just said enough's enough.
I agree. I agree. The first issue was inflation, the cost of living, groceries, gas, day-to-day stuff, families, immigration.
Ooh, that's a
right?
big one. Yeah. The immigration, big one.
Wide open borders.
Yep.
And I think you're right on the woke stuff, the political correctness.
Correct.
I mean, we've dealt with political correctness for years, but we've been in an era the last 4 years where if you say something that they don't agree with, they cancel you.
Right.
They try to destroy you online. They try to destroy on social media accounts, and people are just fed up with that stuff.
Yeah, and before you hit pause or delete on this show here because you don't like what I'm about to say, let me define what I mean by this. Here's my opinion on woke. You should be able to have an opinion and not be ousted for that opinion. You can disagree with my opinion and let's be friends afterwards. And I can disagree with your opinion and be friends afterwards. You know, it was funny. I just had a conversation with someone and the coolest thing happened. She didn't vote for Trump. And she told me why. And I told her why I voted for Trump. And we've had this very warm disagreement. And by the end, she goes, you know what I love about this? We're still really good friends and we don't hate each other. That's how this should be.
I agree with that.
And when I say woke is when you judge someone based on that and you cancel them, kick them out of your life, say, don't talk to me, I can't have anything to do with you. Like, that's ridiculous.
Or you infiltrate it through policy in entire organizations, schools, universities, corporations, and then you force those employees or those students to adhere to those ideologies. Right. People are sick of it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother level of ridiculousn's.
But I think, look, it was a big night. I believed it was going to be close and potentially go on for days. Mm-hmm. So it was very pleasantly surprised. Very, very pleasantly surprised.
Do you think we saw a realignment of the Republican Party very similar to that of the Reagan administration when they came in?
It's been completely realigned.
I mean, completely.
So we've had three political families that have held the power in politics for the last 20 plus years. The Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas. Right?
Right. Rightfully so. And serving multiple terms.
All opposed Trump.
Right. And not only that, all back-to-back terms. Right. I mean, I believe this is the second president in United States history, next to Cleveland, that has 2 terms, but not consecutive.
That's right.
You know, had to pull themselves back into the party. And let's not forget, like, this new president, he was written off after, you know, what happened last year, 4 years ago, January 6th. He was written off. And then he was put in a courtroom and mugshots. I mean, everything you could to make sure this wasn't going to happen. I mean, you wrote the book on it, and then all of a sudden, you don't only just win, you take away all the blue states. You took the whole blue wall away. And you won the population vote, too. Hadn't been done since 2004 with Bush.
That's right.
So you have this entire realignment, and you have multiple areas of the population that don't typically vote Republican that came in and said, all right, I need a change. And that's something that no one was expecting.
Well, talk about the realignment. So probably this time last year, when all this was happening with President Trump, with all the legal issues and whatnot, There were many, not all, but there were many in the political establishment that were keeping their distance.
Sure.
Right?
Don't want to get caught up in this.
They smelled weakness.
Right.
They thought it was the end for him. And he overcame. And those people are back, which I'm glad they are. Big tent. But it's his party now. And it's completely remade with new coalitions. And it's a party for the people. It truly is the working class people.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you put it that way because that brings a question I wanted to ask. So I think Trump made a mistake in his previous campaign by bringing, let's call it the good old boy club of Washington, into his cabinet. And then they turned on him, right? On the way out, they turned on him. And, Barr and all the guys, they weren't the group that he thought they were, right? Who does he bring in now? I mean, we've heard Elon Musk's name.
Right.
We've heard Kennedy Jr.
Yep.
Who does he bring? Does he bring in all new people? Does he bring in people that obviously he's got a circle? He's got plenty of people in the circle, but does he bring in all new people and say, yeah, we're going to change some things?
Well, they've said they're going to. I mean, it was his first time coming into this, never having been into politics, so they're going to be much more organized this time and understand. Organized, maybe not the right word. Understanding when they pick a person, they need to make sure that they're not a part of the swamp, they're not a part of the deep state. Don't tell me the deep state's not real, because we saw what they've done to him for years.
Yep.
So I think we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I'm excited. By the way, bringing Elon Musk in it too. I mean, this is
big time.
That brings up a whole nother subject.
A whole nother subject.
Mainstream media. So mainstream media has been telling us throughout this entire campaign, particularly the last few weeks, Trump was sliding, he was going down,
going backwards.
Harris was surging.
Yep.
Those are the mainstream big TV and the cable news networks.
That's that pre-programming.
And guess what?
Yeah.
What we're sitting here doing right now, podcasts,
won that election.
X, all the new media. That President Donald Trump embraced, right? He was able to talk to people outside of the sound bites that they cut and manipulate on mainstream media. And so I think media is truly remade.
Yep.
Well, we see the decline in the fall of mainstream media in this election.
That's a great point. Jon Stewart came out yesterday and chastised mainstream media because he's very upset Trump won, from the Daily Show. He's very upset and blasted the mainstream media and said a lot of profanity towards them for basically leading the American people to believe it was going to be that close. And his point was he thinks people didn't go vote because they're like, they already got it. Like, because the media's telling me she's gaining ground. I don't really got it. So he's actually blaming them for other voters not getting out. I don't agree with it, but that's his take on it, right? And I think that podcast Trump did with Rogan was big for his vote. I think it was very big.
I agree with you.
And I think if I'm wrong here, I might be wrong, but didn't Kamala decline that with him?
That's
because he asked her to come on.
That is my
and I think that hurt her because Rogan, what'd he do? He put his hat in the ring for Trump. He said, "That's my guy."
And then I think Dana White, election night or morning, wee hours of the morning, mentioned many of the other podcasts that President Trump had done.
Right. I mean, he did them with a lot of heavy influencers. A lot.
Right.
And that changed
are touching
the dynamic.
whole new demographics.
And it showed up in that 30 and younger, because who are the guys listening to that podcast? It's 30 and younger for the most part. And that group got out and voted in groves, bigger than they've ever seen. I think they said, if you go back to Rock the Vote campaign that we talked about in the last podcast, it's bigger than it was then. They got a lot of young voters, and they got a lot of people out, and that was a major difference, along with just the ethnicity difference that we saw this time around compared for the Republican Party that we've never seen.
Right.
And so going into this, Trump ran on two things. He ran on, I'll fix the economy and I'll make America greater again, whatever it was. Very similar campaign to 16. Very similar. The only difference is the economy was bad coming out of 15. It was bad, but it was nothing like what it was in right now. It was in shambles. And it was almost like perfect timing for him to come in and run on a campaign that he knows works. And it hit at the heart of the American people.
Yes.
And I think the American people are expecting big things and stability from him. And I think that has to happen in two ways. I think number one is, let's not jump to conclusion on the tariffs, because that's going to take a minute for that to happen. And if history tells me anything, he didn't tackle that till midway through his first administration. I think the tax cuts that are set to roll back his original tax cuts, I think they're going to address that out the gate. I think they're going to find a way to maintain those. I think they're going to find a way to boost employment and boost productivity from the American jobs and the American workers and the American businesses. I think that's the first thing he's going to tackle there to help the people out. But I think for him to have a successful economic run, he's got, and this might sound strange, he's got to weaken the U.S. dollar. And this might sound strange to the audience, but because one of his main goals is exports.
Right.
And right now, we make a fabulous product, a very, very good price. It's too damn expensive.
Right.
Because the dollar's so strong. And if you look at Trump, the day after Trump was, quote unquote, elected, the U.S. dollar's through the roof.
Right.
It's through the roof right now.
Right.
And that sounds great because we're going, the dollar's strong. But that's a problem for him that he'll find a way to get that down. And I think the second thing is he's got to tackle the national debt. And it's going to grow because it's at a deficit. And he's not going to touch the veteran affairs. He's not going to touch Social Security. He's absolutely going to raise the DOD budget, which he should. But that's where Elon's going to come in, and he's hoping he can trim some of that fat. But those are hard costs, and those hard costs put it at a deficit every year, like an automatic deficit. So he's going to say, how do I fix that? By lowering the interest rate on that debt. That's how that's going to work. And that'll be his claim to fame on that. I believe that's the case.
Well, look, here's what we know. He is a president that is uniquely involved in details, and when there's a big problem to be solved, he doesn't just delegate it. I mean, he puts people in charge to do it, but he understands. I saw Tucker Carlson was talking to Bobby Kennedy recently, maybe yesterday, on a little clip on a podcast, and Bobby was describing to Tucker how President Trump pulled out a napkin and started drawing a map of foreign countries, and talking about the number of troops that we have there and the number of troops that so American troops are in between these two countries. I don't remember what the countries were. And, we've guys over there, they're stationed there. And these two countries, what their armies look like. And then Trump said, so, okay, the number of, how many generals do they have? He's asking all these details. And then he's pointing out that, so if those two countries decide to go into conflict, basically our troops are toast. So he's involved with that level of detail. So I think that's going to be with everything. The departments, right, that they're going to reorganize.
I think it's great.
And look, it looks like we may hold the House.
You know what? We've got the Senate. If we hold the House, things move pretty quickly.
Correct.
Real fast. And it looks like our own Rick Scott's going to try to run for majority leader in the Senate.
By the way, shout out to him, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations.
And to our governor in Florida, right? Successfully campaigned for, in my view, the abortion amendment that failed. I was grateful for that. And our voting, how clean and our voting was great.
It got out there, and it showed up. And you look at our state, our very proud state that we live in, was recognized very, very well on all media outlets because that vote was done by 10 o'clock, 98% of the votes. And then not only that, the governor got out and he lobbied for the vote for Trump. He won Dade County.
Yes.
Like that hadn't happened in quite some time. And so that was a big deal, huge deal. And so there were a lot of first things that happened in this campaign we hadn't seen in some time.
Well, in nothing lasts forever, right?
Correct.
So, and we've got a new president. We're going to have a new president sworn in, and Republicans. This is his party for sure. The way you sustain this is you're going to have to stick with other Republican elected officials, stick to the ideas that President Trump ran on, right? People's pocketbooks, the economy, their families. That's what it's about.
That is what it's about. And right? If you disagree with what we're saying, that's cool. No problem. I mean, literally, that's your opinion.
Right.
But please don't fall into the category of the panic politics. Don't fall into this ideology that Trump's going to take away your ability to vote.
Right.
That Trump's going to make it to where there's no more terms. Like that is not going to happen. That is a constitutional thing, right? Last time I checked, the 19th Amendment is part of the Constitution. Like these are things that are not going to happen. Like you're not going to, like, please don't fall into that rhetoric. You may not like the man, you may not like his policies. That's totally acceptable, but don't fall into that. The world's coming to an end. I'm not going to be able to vote. That all these things. That's not the case here. And I think that the far opposing side left wanted you to believe that, and that's unfortunate. And I think there's another thing that the panic of politics, like creating pandemonium, panic, fear mongering. I think that didn't ran its course. I think people were tired of it, and I think people saw right through it eventually and said, "This is complete crap." Like
it's funny, because one of their closing arguments was our republic, our Constitution, our democracy is at risk, and some of the exit polling that I heard was there were people that were voting because they thought our republic was at risk because of the administration,
the current administration.
Yeah, our borders are open.
Yeah.
We're involved in foreign wars. right?
Absolutely.
So maybe some people did vote on that. They just voted for President Trump to protect the republic.
Yeah, you just got them to think, oh crap, I need to go get him out there to protect it.
I also find interesting the coalition that the president put together. We know that Hispanic men and African American males, I mean, he increased his numbers exponentially.
Like never seen before.
Correct.
That type of exponential.
Correct. And then you had the other side saying that, like the Iowa poll, women are going to carry the day because women are going to reject Trump right. So the left puts people into a box based on their sex, their gender, their ethnicity.
Sure.
And that's just not the real world.
Well, and they just tell them that's how you're supposed to vote.
Right. And President Trump, because he campaigned on issues that families and people care about, they broke his way.
Absolutely.
And when mainstream media would show you people in a rural community in a diner, you know, they go in their cameras and they've got their MAGA hats on, and mainstream media would lead you to believe, and then they talk about the economy and inflation. Well, those are just a bunch of old white people.
Right.
And they're not, they can't carry elections. True, they can't. But guess the same conversations happening in those rural cafes were the same conversations happen in barbershops in the inner city.
Right. You're just not getting as much mainstream media on that.
That's right.
But it does happen.
Same conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, let's go back to that Elon Musk thing, because I think this is interesting. You know, he runs a large corporation, and then he bought X. Twitter ended up changing it to X. And then he made significant cuts at X.
Yes.
He made significant cuts. He won't be able to make those same cuts in the on the budget for, you know, the country, because those are hard costs. Right. But he does come in and bring a fresh perspective on a lot of things that I think other people may have overlooked or just didn't want to deal with. And that's why I'm excited to see him on the cabinet there, and also excited that he comes in with the mindset of, you know, I'm not here for the term. I don't need the money. I don't need any of that. I'm here for the greater good of the country.
Absolutely.
And we need that.
Right.
We need that. We need to welcome more.
And I think what we may see, because people that have been in government their entire lives accept the system for what it is, even if they don't like it. So if you have a bloated agency that's got too many employees,
right,
but they have civil service, it's just what it is.
Right.
You just accept it.
Right.
I think with a guy like Elon Musk, you're going to see some creativity. He's not just going to accept it at its face value that, you know, this is what we inherited and this is what we have to. I think he's going to find creative ways to make more cuts than we think are possible.
I hope so. That's exciting.
The other thing that I'm excited about is Make America Healthy Again.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's true. Our food is got stuff in it. I mean, look, the obesity problem, diabetes, these are big issues. And look, you can't, and I'm for freedom. So if someone wants to go to McDonald's, they ought to be able to go to McDonald's.
It should be an option.
Right?
Right.
But we also ought to know what's going into our fast food that's not allowed in fast food in other countries. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, that's just one point.
Right. No, it's a great point too.
Yeah.
So I also take a look at, I look at the administration that's coming in and the one that's exiting here, and I look at housing. And that's obviously the bulk of our podcast. Two things have to happen in housing right now for housing to get back on track. Affordability being number one, which is defined by either a lower interest rate or because that'll make a lower payment, or a lower product cost.
Right.
And I look at a lot of the housing starts and a lot of the permits and what's going on, and we're at very recessionary levels. Like, we are not strong in that category. And I would argue the reason we're not strong is because a builder cannot find profitability when the rates are 6.75 to 7.5.
Okay.
They can't build that home in a profitable manner with the cost of goods being inflated.
So the demand is there.
The demand is there, but the actual purchasing of that home, you have a limited amount of buyers that can afford that.
So they're not building the homes.
They're not building enough homes.
And what are they, instead of building homes, what are they doing?
They're buying the land and they're sitting on it.
Okay.
They're buying the land. The land is there. The vacant development is there. They're waiting on it. But I think the builders are so they still have the financial scars from 2008, right? And so they're very, very cautious to go just build all this product.
Is this what? And I don't know your business, so I may be wrong saying this, but I think so there's been more apartments built. Mm-hmm. Is this why you shift? There's more profitability there in this environment, so you shift to building apartments?
I think that was one of the reasons.
Managing that?
And I think a lot of those apartments were financed and loans were done on those and they took time to become vertical and build.
Okay.
And loans were done on those on lower interest rates.
Right.
You don't see a lot of new apartments breaking ground right now. You see them being vertical.
Right, that's right.
So those are products that happened 2-3 years ago, right? When rates were a little different. The point with housing right now is if the residential construction worker gets laid off or isn't being employed, that is the job market. That's like a warning sign, right? And I think Trump knows
in a coal mine, right?
Right, and I think Trump knows that.
That's
I
happening
think the
now.
Fed knows that, and I also know that for mortgage rates when they come down, that means the Federal Reserve rate is lower, and that's also the interest they're paying on the national debt. So I think all of that goes into the same category of things that he's got to get done and wants to get done, but to get housing back on track. You know, I think that he ran on a platform of I'm going to fix the economy,
Right?
And I think that was a very large encumbering thing. I'm going to make sure we have healthy jobs, make sure people are in a better economic standpoint, and then housing. All of that's in there. And so I think those will be. I don't know that Jerome Powell makes it through this administration. I don't think it happens.
Right.
I think the president can't tell the head of the head of Federal Reserve what to do because they're supposed to be dependent, right? Well, this last administration kind of showed me that they're not as independent as we think they are, right? So I think Powell either works with this administration to get that stuff in line, or he's out the door and we're going to reappoint someone else. And I think that can happen rather quickly.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think it can happen rather quickly on that. So if you're President Trump and you're with your let's say you're in his cabinet, what's your first course of action with him? What's your first thing that you tackle?
The very first thing you can act on immediately is the border.
Yeah, agreed.
Executive order, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Make sure those border agents know you have, and they know.
Yeah, they know.
We got your back.
Yep.
We're shutting it down.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing you can do.
You know, this morning, I think the biggest criticism the Democratic Party took is that they didn't address that. They waited way too long in the campaign. They ignored it. And then like a week left, they start talking about it, but it's too late.
Well,
at that point.
They tried in the closing weeks of the campaign, they tried to blame the border on President Trump. People know what they saw, even on mainstream media. We know what we saw for the last 4 years.
Right.
Right?
Right. It wasn't good.
Correct.
So let me ask you this. So let's say you've just been living under a rock. What has been going on at the borders for our audience? Like what has been going on at the borders that's like it's such a big deal? Let's say they've been living under a rock.
I mean, it's just porous, right?
Right.
I mean, people are just coming in.
Groves.
The federal government has been paying. Again, these are undocumented.
Right.
So are there, well, first of all, they should be coming through legally regardless of whether they are good people or bad people, because we are a country of laws.
Right.
Right. But surely there are people that are trying to escape their country and they're good people and they want to come here to work. I still think they should come here legally.
Yeah.
But because they're undocumented, we know who they are. We know criminals from other countries have come into our country.
Precisely.
We know our government has put some of those, they put them on airplanes, they put them on buses, they populate cities. They overwhelm cities where they don't have resources for medical care and housing. And we know there are stories that were talked about in the campaign where undocumented illegals have raped and killed people in this country.
Mm-hmm. That's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's not okay. And to your point, if there was a checks and balance system coming in here, maybe some of those people may not have come in.
Right. And don't tell me, well, that was a one-off. Well, if that was your daughter,
sure,
it ain't a one-off.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you could argue that we have United States citizens that have done that as well, right? Yeah, and yeah, we have citizens that have acted
That's
that
right.
right? You could argue that, but I think the point there is that why would you welcome and why would you be okay? More importantly, basically doing like an on delay at the border, come one, come all with no checks and balances. Because I can tell you right now, through the Border Patrol, they've got data on those bad dudes. They
do.
know who the bad dudes are, right?
They
and
do.
if they're coming through there, they're going to be like, no. And guess what? The bad dudes know. If we're guarding that border, they're not going to even try it. They're not even going to try to come across.
It's just me. There was the day or two before the election, some young people, this is online, and maybe on X or a reel on Instagram, I don't remember. They dressed up in Harris Waltz shirts. Mm-hmm. And, through the data, you know if a household is likely supporting Trump or Harris.
Okay.
Right? Based on registration and whatnot, or yard signs or whatever.
Right.
So they got likely Harris voters, and they would have someone with them that was not in a Harris Waltz shirt, and they'd have them standing by the car, knock on the door. Like one husband and wife answers the door and says, "Oh, we're supporters. You got our vote. You don't need to worry about us." He says, "Oh, that's great. Thank you, but we have a problem. This is an undocumented worker, and we need somewhere for this person to stay for a little while." the Waltz campaign would like you to take this undocumented person. Can they stay in your house? Well, it's like, well, we can just get a sleeping bag and put it in can they just hang out in your yard?
Oh my gosh.
And they did this at numerous homes. I mean, it's kind of absurd, but again, if you're a Harris voter and you're saying the border should be wide open and we can take care of people, and it's until the bird lands on your front yard.
They were trying to make a point.
And that's right.
And they did.
That's right.
They absolutely did. Because I can almost, without seeing that, tell you how that went.
Right.
I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure they didn't roll out the red carpet.
One guy said, everybody in our house has COVID. And I think they said, oh, they don't mind getting COVID.
Oh my gosh.
It's so bad.
Oh, that is bad. Well, I think that for me, here's how I look at it. I woke up with a sense of re-energized on Wednesday morning, and re-energized because of the economic possibilities of our country, and the re-energized of knowing that we actually have a path. You may not like the path, and it's okay to disagree with it, but we have a path. I didn't know what the hell the path was with the current administration and the campaign of Harris Waltz. I had no idea. And so when we talked about it last time, the anxiety that the general public was having, I think you said it was 72% of voters had anxiety. I think a lot of that was the anxiety as well of like, well, okay, if this side wins, it's not matter who wins. What are they going to do?
Absolutely.
Like,
right.
what's their policy?
Yeah,
I can't tell you one thing they were going to do.
They ran a campaign on emotion.
Yes.
Trump ran a campaign on ideas.
Yeah. And that's what we needed. And I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad the American public saw it the same way.
And I don't know. I mean, I would hope the country would unify, and because we're all Americans
at the end of the
day.
Right.
And I think we all want our country to be successful, even people that didn't vote.
Correct.
The way that I voted. But the far left, if they don't examine, so I watched MSNBC yesterday morning for a little while, and because Hispanic men and African American men broke in bigger numbers, historic numbers for President Trump, Al Sharpton and Joe Scarborough both called African American men and Hispanic men misogynist. I mean, if you think that's why you lost this election,
right,
you're going to keep losing elections.
Yeah, they've got to rebuild that party for the better.
Right.
And it's going to take some time, and they're going to have to find a new leader. They're going to find a new look of the party. They're going to find a new face of the party, and they're going to do it because the American people have said, "Listen, I'm over it, and I don't want to see it anymore." And it's not for the better of the country. And I love the idea you just said of uniting. And I think I heard Dave Portnoy say this. He goes, "Listen, I voted for Trump. You may not have, and that's okay." He goes, "But if President Trump, now it's president, but at the time, if former President Trump doesn't win and Kamala does," he goes, "I will get out and I will root on her success because as an American, I need the president to be successful."
Right.
And I thought that was such a great statement that, man, let's put that on a poster and put it all over the place, because that was true. As an American, we need the president of the United States to be successful. And I think that that's missing in the message here at the end for a lot of people. Like, I've stayed off social media because I've heard people that are like, their whole day, for God's sakes, in New York, they gave people the day off.
Yes.
To mourn the loss.
Yes.
Like, really?
Right.
Like, really? You're that emotionally involved that that's where you got? Like, come on. Like, I'm not saying, and that's your opinion, but guys, come on. We might be a little out of bounds on this. Giving the day off.
Absolutely.
You already got the day off to vote.
Correct. Right.
You just didn't go. Come on. Like, that to me is like, that's how they ran on emotion, to your point.
Right.
They ran on emotion and set that party up for failure. And that's why people are having emotional breakdowns right now, because they thought that there was no way they were going to lose based on emotion.
Absolutely.
And emotion is not going to carry a campaign. We saw it at Howard University when, at the end of the night, you saw it all over the TV. And I think the Democrats and the Democratic media set people up for failure. Because, I was all night long going back and forth between Fox, CNN, and that's how I get, honestly, that's how I get the blended truth sometimes.
Right, I do the same. I do the same thing.
And Rachel Maddow was on there for CNN, jumping up and down in complete, just rhetoric about how could this be happening. People say they're voting on the economy. The economy is great. I'm thinking, what? It might be great for you, Rachel, but for the general public, it's awful. And then she said, we've already beat inflation. We've already tackled it. Well, just because that says 2.7 on there, the grocery store says a lot more.
That's right.
You know, the energy bill says a lot more.
If you're on a fixed income
Oh my
with
gosh.
kids,
She might as well have just screamed, I'm so disconnected with the general public, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And I think that unfortunately, for the people that got behind that campaign, that's where the level of disappointment lied. Between the emotion and the rhetoric, it set them up for failure. And now they got to rebuild. And they got to completely rebuild. And in the meantime, the Republican Party has become the party of the people.
Absolutely.
When's the last time you were able to say that?
It absolutely has.
The party of the people of the United States.
Right.
So, you know, I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. I'm looking forward to the next 4 months because this transition is going to set the stage for the next 4 years.
Yeah, it's going to be, the next 4 months are going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm excited to kind of watch it with you. And thanks for joining us as always. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, share this podcast. Please 5-star review it. Check us out on our YouTube channel at What You're One More with Number One. Hey, we just hit a milestone, by the way, on that for the number of subscribers. Thank you guys so much. Keep pumping that out there for us. And until the next episode, Lenny, thanks for joining us. We'll see you.
Thank you.
One more.
Good. Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.